Hi, welcome to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden, and we've got an exciting episode today. I've got my friend and fellow journalist, does a lot more investigative reporting than I ever did, though. Sam Cooper is on the show, and watch his material, see his material, read his material. He's on Substack and the Bureau. This is his latest article. We're going to be talking about that and the news conference, as well as his new book, Willful Blindness. This is all about foreign interference. This is huge, and so we're gonna bring Sam on now. And thanks so much. We're just talking about your book here, Sam, Willful Blindness, and I want everybody to get a copy. I assume this is available on Amazon.
Yes, it launched a few days ago, and I think the pre-purchase copies may have sold out, but I think they're trying to get it all stocked up again. So Amazon and Optimum International website, I believe, has copies right now.
Okay, once again, folks, that's Willful Blindness. You can get that. Read it. This is a huge issue, and so we're going to get back to this news conference of October 28th. I'm going to show a brief clip from that news conference, and then we're going to discuss what was this all about.
Nearly every opposition party leader has called for the names of the parliamentarians identified in the NSICOP report, but the Trudeau government refuses to do so. This plays directly into the hands of authoritarians. Until those names are identified, a cloud of suspicion hangs over all parliamentarians, but especially those of Chinese heritage. It's time for the government to come clean to Canadians and defend our democracy. Sam.
Thank you, MP Vuong. I'm here today to highlight some of the names and entities covered in my updated book and to pose a question. Should other Canadian journalists be examining the openly available evidence surrounding these networks? Firstly, my book recounts reporting on a 2020 tape recording provided to me, where Senator Yuen Pao Wu is heard in a 47-minute private briefing with the Canada Committee 100 Society. This group included Conservative Senator Victor O as an advisory member, along with an individual officially listed in a Chinese United Front Overseas Leaders Group. The Canada Committee 100 Society is led in Vancouver by Ding Guo, a journalist who is also an advisor to British Columbia Premier David Eby. Other journalists participating in this tape-recorded meeting with Senator Wu later supported Liberal candidate Parm Bains in 2021. Bains had told these journalists he opposed Kenny Chiu's Foreign Agent Registry Bill, describing it as an exclusionary policy. Ding Guo was also reportedly involved in the 2022 Conservative Party leadership race, alongside community leaders officially connected to Beijing's overseas influence arm, the United Front. I can provide more details later on how this should illuminate NSICOP 2024.
Okay, so I guess we'll start from there. So whose idea was, where did this germinate? Because we have Conservative Member of Parliament Kevin Vuong introducing the news conference. Was this his idea? Was this a committee's idea? Where did this come from?
Right. He's actually an independent MP, Kevin Vuong, having been kicked out by the Liberal Party in 2021 for reasons that potentially, could have involved a foreign state. But to your question, it was independent MP Kevin Vuong's idea. He's a Toronto area MP that believes he was interfered with in the 2021 election. And so he called for this press conference, having, the rights as an MP to table a press conference at the National Press Gallery. And he asked myself and these other subject matter experts, would we agree to present and talk about the threat of foreign interference? And that was really the only organization. I said, yes, I have reported in my updated book, Willful Blindness, a number of names and entities stemming from my investigations. And so this is a highly edited and legally vetted material, which is why I cited what I said at the press conference as such, and also played a tape recording that I referred to in my book that I believe points to central networks involved in election interference and influence in Canada, and ties together senior parliamentarians and individuals that my investigations indicate have infiltrated leadership races, probably from the provincial to federal level, and are involved in networks that are supporting clandestinely some MPs. And as a matter of fact, warning leadership candidates that they had better learn from the lessons of the defeat of Kenny Chiu and Alice Wan as Conservative MPs in Richmond. So my press conference remarks were very brief, lawyered, and specific to deep threats facing Canada. And that's why I presented my findings in that forum.
Yeah, I thank you for correcting me. Kevin Vuong is an independent MP. I don't slip of the tongue there. And of course, if he wasn't an independent, he probably would not have mentioned the fact that this interference is not just limited, obviously, to the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party. He mentions the Conservative Party, the leadership, and he also mentions Conservative and former Senator Victor O, who is, we've got 4 names mentioned here. I think a lot of people clung to this and said, hey, somebody is mentioning names from this NSICOP report because it's been redacted. The Prime Minister knows who they are. But we have Victor O, former senator with the Conservative Party. We have Senator Wan Pa-Wu, Liberal. We have Liberal Member of Parliament Mary Ng, and possibly Parm Baines, another Liberal, implicated in this to some degree. Now, of course, I'm being careful as well because we don't know the full extent of this, probably because we have a redacted copy available of this NSICOP report. We've been demanding the government come clean with these names. I don't see a lot of journalists out there, Sam, with the exception of yourself and myself occasionally, but I don't see a lot of journalists in the mainstream media demanding that these names be released. When this report was made public last April, we had a lot of people suggesting maybe it's time we knew what's in this report. Maybe the Prime Minister and the Cabinet shouldn't be the only ones seeing the unredacted copy. Why are we not getting any response? And I would blame the official opposition too. When the House resumed, I said, well, I'm sure we're going to get some calls from the Conservative Party for names on this list, this NSICOP list. We had absolutely silence from everybody. Actually, I think the only one who brought it up again was the leader of the Green Party. So, but we had no reaction at all from the government or the official opposition. Why do you think that is?
I think it is because all parties, to my knowledge, as I reflected in that press conference, have exposure to foreign interference. So this would relate to China having access to parliamentarians, I believe, in all parties. This would relate to India having access to some politicians to a lesser degree. And I should add, I believe that extremists within the Sikh community, which India is targeting egregiously in Canada, I don't think we should forget that there are extremists within the Sikh community in Canada that I believe should be related to concerns of foreign interference or geopolitics playing out in Canadian communities in a very dangerous way. And so, very simply, I think that all political leaders in Canada are nervous. They do have exposure wherever that exposure lies. And I'll just be very clear. MP Vuong spoke about the NSICOP 2024, report and names. My reporting in the news conference and my previous reporting and my book is what precipitated the NSICOP 2024 report. I believe I referred in my press conference to several key cases that will be reflected in that report. But let me be very clear. I haven't read NSI COP 2024, but I accessed the intelligence that they reviewed, and they had to review it because they had to check in to my media reporting that has really started this whole national discourse and debate. And so that's the nature of my comments. When I say that Liberal MP Mary Ng, according to 3 national security sources, is one of 11 Toronto area candidates allegedly implicated in a network in a way that CSIS assesses she was not witting. So some of these network members allegedly are very knowing of the activity, the clandestine activity of China, some not knowing. And I was informed that Mary Ng is one of those 11 candidates, which CSIS looked at in terms of being unwittingly implicated in that network. So to circle back to your question, I think most reasonable Canadians would agree there's enough evidence that's come out in public reports, in confirmed news reports, that Canada has deep problems, whether it's from China, India, or organized crime related to India, and I'm saying even more so to China, that is damaging our democracy. And yes, Canadians do want, they don't want to just hear from the reporter that needs to step forward to fulfill his duty to inform Canadians in the same way that the reporters that exposed Watergate in the United States did. They want to hear from the government in a parliamentary setting. Who are the people implicated, and what do those people have to say to answer for it? That's my view.
Yeah. Well, of course, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau testified at the Hogue inquiry a couple of weeks ago, and it was a bit of a gong show as far as I was concerned, because not only did all he didn't do was wave around an imaginary list of Conservative MPs that he imagined were implicated in foreign interference. And it reminded me actually of Joe McCarthy waving around his list of 205. I have a list of 205 communists on, and I'm not going to tell you who they are right now, but I got the list.
Yeah.
And every time I mention McCarthy, somebody out there says McCarthy was right. Well, he may have been right, but his tactics were abominable. And Justin Trudeau, of course, is mimicking those tactics, making smearing remarks against everybody in the Conservative caucus. They're somehow all implicated now. But what really bothered me, Sam, about the Hogue inquiry, this is supposed to be a look into foreign interference, yes, generally. But we all know what precipitated the Hogue inquiry. It was Chinese interference, election interference, especially in Toronto. That's what precipitated this. A whistleblower from CSIS precipitated this inquiry. And now Trudeau is talking about India. India is the main threat. It's these Indian diplomats sitting around plotting murder and mayhem. And that was his entire focus. Let's not talk about China, except if it involves Conservative MPs, then they're implicated. But it's India. Do you think Trudeau deliberately hijacked and is hijacking this foreign interference inquiry?
I do. I read his comments in the same way. I thought they were egregiously inappropriate. And first, let me say that I do believe that the Prime Minister does know about a number of MPs in all parties implicated. So he was correct, I believe, that he does know the names of current and former Conservative politicians that, if I can paraphrase his remark, strong intelligence indicates would be seriously implicated. So I believe I can tell your listeners and viewers, I think Trudeau was right. But yes, by the same token, he was egregiously partisan. Even in his own words, he said, I'm going to get a little more partisan than I planned to. And at that moment, if I could read the mind of Justice Marie-Josée Ogue or the commission lawyers that had to sit there and let the Prime Minister, with respect due, unroll his partisan talking points, that undermined the whole basis of the inquiry, which was not supposed to be partisan. And remember, the Conservative Party had less legal standing than others. And Commissioner Ogue's argument was, we don't want this to be partisan. So I thought that was very damaging. And I did think, I know I think I can assert as an expert that was a key deflection. And he pointed to the opposition leader and their lack of a security clearance, insinuating that the leader didn't want to know about problems with his own party. And again, I say, look, there could be something to that, but it is very interesting how a lot of the Ottawa media, who don't do any footwork to find out, what is the real evidence underlying the major threat to Canada. At my press conference, I played a tape recording with the senator talking to overt Chinese communist agents and promising to protect their activities. Yet a lot of the Ottawa press gallery isn't chasing down evidence like that. They jumped on the Prime Minister's remarks, and suddenly the story has become, I agree with you, it's about, does the opposition have a bigger problem? And it's I think people that have been following this know it's quite clear that the Prime Minister and his senior staffers are directly implicated in a cover-up, and it's because their party has been more vulnerable to the biggest by far threat, which is China.
Yeah, and I know you're busy. This will be my final query, Sam, but I find it fascinating that it was the Bloc Québécois that suggested the question about naming names should be essentially kicked upstairs to the Hogue inquiry and let Justice Hogue decide what to do about it. And of course, I found that to be so ironic because, of course, the Bloc Québécois has no interest in Canadian sovereignty in protecting in Canada. They're about Quebec independence. So, but that was so eagerly accepted by both the government, the official opposition, and the NDP, saying, "Good idea. Let the Hogue inquiry decide." So it was kicked upstairs. And the Hogue inquiry is now saying, "Well, we don't really think we have the right to do that. We don't think we're in a legal position to name these names. So they'll probably remain secret forever." Are we in a position where it takes, and I'll say it correctly, an independent member of Parliament, Kevin Vuong, does it take an independent member of Parliament to push this? Is there any real desire from the rest of the MPs, maybe a Green Party member or two, but is there any interest from the official opposition and the government to naming these names, getting this all out there in the public?
Yeah, I agree with you. The first point is I do believe that the politicians in both houses of Parliament believed that the Hogue Commission would refrain or revert to the standard Canadian, privileged position, and that is that legal rules preclude us from naming names of people that can't defend themselves. And to that, I say very ironically, as it came out in the press conference, MP Kevin Vuong believes he was targeted by China in the 2021 election because of his strong stances against China and their human rights abuses. I had investigated his story. I couldn't be sure, but I saw a lot of major flags. And then what came out in the Hogue Commission in a limited way is that CSIS disclosed one of their major new cases of concern is that a Liberal candidate was interfered with by a foreign government, and it was because of the candidate's position on China. And so I was asked at the press conference, do you believe this could be MP Kevin Vuong? And I went through the reasons why I said that it's quite plausible from my investigation that China could have targeted a candidate in this way. And there were a lot of deep concerns surrounding the way Kevin Vuong was ejected as a Liberal candidate. And so I do believe he could be the case. And I suggested if the Hogue Commission, with their powers, can find out that in this sense, they could exonerate a candidate who will probably lose his political career if he's the one attacked by China. If that's confirmed, they should come out and say, look, we're not putting anyone's reputation on the line. We're saving someone's reputation. Kevin Vuong is the case. If they know that, they should come out and say it, as should the Prime Minister, as should the director of CSIS, because that's only right and just. If Kevin Vuong is that person that was attacked reputationally, and I'm telling you, David, as someone that has studied China's secret police, they've already done this. They've done it in North America. They've done it in Canada and the United States.
Well, it is a huge problem, but it's like so many political problems in Canada. They tend to get buried because there are not enough reporters out there like you, Sam, doing. We don't have investigative journalists anymore, certainly not in the United States. It's we repeat talking points. We sit down at press conferences and write down the notes verbatim from the government spokesperson, and we need more people doing the work you're doing. So once again, read Sam's work, The Bureau. It's on Substack. This is independent journalism at its best. And read his book, Willful Blindness. It's available. You can get it through Amazon if that's the easiest way for you to do it. Sam warns that the first copies might be sold out, but there's more coming. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today, Sam. It's been a pleasure, and we'll have you back. And I've written about this at the Post Millennial, where I also contribute my editorial time. But I think we need to do more articles on this in Canada and the U.S. because this is a huge issue. So thank you so much for joining me today, and come back anytime. We love you here.
Thanks a lot, David.
Okay, bye for now. Well, that was Sam Cooper, fantastic investigative journalist. And we're not done today. We're going to be talking about how the Trudeau government is continuing to push the parameters of euthanasia. I was going to say after our commercial break.
You're not resigning. You're staying on as Liberal
I had a
leader?
press conference yesterday,
Yes.
I am determined to lead this party into the next election because we need to put all our tools together, and I am actually really excited about this fight. I think the opportunity to allow Canadians to make the best possible choice for the future is what we all get into politics for, to make a difference, to pitch an argument, and to connect with Canadians in a way that gives them optimism and a realistic plan for the future. That's what we're in the business of, and that's what I'm excited about.
Absolutely.
Canada.
Well, I was wondering what he was in the business of, actually. Apparently, it's the business of delusion. And that's that is a little clip interview after Trudeau was confronted by his caucus about it's time to resign. Trudeau says, "No, I'm staying," and that's delusion. I tell you, folks, I got a message yesterday on my email from the Conservative Party, which I'm not a member of, and no, I don't contribute to, but I get their emails, and they're talking about an election and is imminent. Who's been saying that for the last 2 months? I have, and yes, anything is possible right now with the dynamics that are going on, with the NDP wavering, with the Bloc saying yesterday, we're not supporting the government anymore, with all of these 24 MPs in the Liberal caucus potentially voting against the government in the next non-confidence. But we could see an election in late November, like I've been saying for quite some time. This is going to be a very exciting week, the rest of it. I want to get on, as in our time left, tremendous story that was on Redacted today. They actually called me to be on the show, and I completely was distracted by other things that day. I wish I had a chance because I dealt with this issue. But let's watch this.
Canada now. This is deeply troubling. Overnight, who didn't see this coming, by the way? The group that worked to legalize assisted dying in Canada, the MAID program, now admits that the program has been abused. Really? That's shocking. Now, Canada leads the world right now on assisted suicides. And the United States is trying to really catch up to them right now, to the Biden administration. So right now, doctors have been coercing people into dying, according to this new report. Coercing them. Wasn't even on the table, but they're encouraging them to do so. Medical assistance in dying has been legal in Canada since 2017 under the MAID program. And in 2021, the program was expanded to allow people with disabilities to use it. And in 2027, it's expected to expand again to allow minors and people with mental health conditions to use it as well. I mean, Malthusian much? This is deeply disgusting. The Telegraph reported this. Assisted dying abused in Canada admits the group that helped legalize it. It comes as data revealed by the Telegraph last week showed that those on lower incomes who were offered the scheme were more likely to opt for it.
That's crazy in and of itself.
Yes.
Oh, that's poor.
That's eugenics.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Your
eugenics.
life sucks
That's exactly
you're
what
poor.
they did.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, right. No, elaborate on that, Philip, please.
Well, that was the eugenics. Part of the eugenics was certain people were just better than others, and it was like your station in life was because of biological factors. And so it was basically what they would do is they would sterilize women that were poor, or that they deemed morally irreprehensible. So it's like this is just another way of doing eugenics. It's like, well, how do we get rid of the poor? Let's just encourage them to legally kill themselves. That's what that's insanity.
Yes.
So not only are they abusing MAID up there in Canada, they're also trying to hide how they're using it. And so, for instance, they had one call here. In one instance, they spoke of a patient who had been approved for assisted dying on the grounds of suffering from hearing loss.
Just off yourself.
Hearing loss.
Life's
On the
not worth
same
it.
phone call, it was claimed some medical colleges in Canada had been advising against referring to MAID on patients' long-form death certificates in a move which could distort the true numbers of people using it, basically hiding it. Hiding it, right? We're going to hide the MAID numbers. Yes, eugenics. Remember that they are trying to get mental health experts to advise the government on how to ethically expand it now to minors, children, who can take advantage of the medical assistance in dying program in Canada. I mean, this is exactly what the liberal, tolerant left wants.
Yeah, eugenics. You know what the Nazi government called people they wanted to euthanize? Useless eaters, meaning they didn't think their life was worth anything. And it was everybody that didn't fit into the parameters of the Nazi state. People with disabilities, mental or physical. Of course, Jews, people who are deemed to be racially inferior. That they didn't fit into the Nazi state. So they were deemed useless eaters. That was the phrase the Nazis used to describe this. And you don't think this is happening in Canada? You don't think once you go down this slippery slope, it doesn't get worse? Of course it does. It gets a lot worse. Let's have a look at this here, because I wrote this article recently about how doctors are feeling guilty. I mentioned this the other day. And why? Because assisted dying is abused in Canada. The group that started it is admitting it's been totally taken beyond its context. Well, of course it has. What does this government really like to talk about? What is its most important subject? What does it always say? The Constitution is all about it. The Charter of Rights is all about it, except it's not. But the Trudeau government loves to talk about abortion being some sort of liberating action, some sort of freedom dispensing mechanism for women. Talk to anybody who's had an abortion and they won't describe it like that. Even if they agree with the concept. Nobody celebrates abortion like it's a wonderful thing, except Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland and his cabinet. They love it. Yeah. All right, how about this? I got to put my glasses on, folks. I'm sorry. Ontario man granted euthanasia for controversial post-COVID-19 vaccination syndrome. Oh, this is incredible. I mean, are you seeing this? All right. I have experienced in my joints what I believe is post-COVID-19 vaccination. There are days when I can't do curls at the gym. It comes and goes. I go to the gym every day because I'm hoping I can purge my system. But is that grounds for euthanasia now? Incredible. Now, Conservative MP Michelle Ferrari says, wow, Liberals don't worry if you have a reaction to the forced vaccination. We have a treatment. Medical assistance in dying. Yeah, that's our euthanasia program. And it amazes me how people think, oh, we had a choice to get that vaccine. You had a choice. Yeah, you had a choice of living or dying. You had a choice between working or not working. You had a choice between traveling or not traveling. You had a choice between leaving your house or staying there and dying. That's the choice you were given. Or you had a choice between ever seeing your mother again. Get the vaccine or you're never going to see your family again. And so, hey, Thomas Pigott, MD, PhD, Dr. Thomas Pigott says, please don't revise history. Nobody was forced to be vaccinated. Governments at all political stripes in Canada and around the world made the best decisions they could to protect vulnerable people. Requirements are part of an organized society. Requirements. Oh, that's not forcing. Force means the use of violence. No, it doesn't. The statement is untrue and harmful. Let's have a look here. Truth-free media came false, forcing people to choose between keeping their jobs so they can feed their children or getting fired and allowing their kids to starve is not a choice. And she says, get a dictionary, doctor. Violence isn't mentioned under force until the third definition. So what? You have to have a gun put to your head now or get the crap beaten out of you. Then that's forcing you to do something. If I'm told I'm not going to work, if I'm told I can't go to the grocery store, that's not force. Nadine Ness, my good friend from Saskatchewan, considering you are a doctor, I find it appalling that you were so uninformed on the concept of consent. It makes me question if you've applied similar force with your patients when it comes to informed consent. Threatening to fire someone or threatening job loss does indeed take away consent. In legal and ethical terms, consent must be freely given without coercion, threats, or manipulation. When someone uses the threat of losing a job or another form of leverage to gain compliance, it is considered coercive behavior. This coercion negates true consent because the individual may feel forced to comply out of fear for their livelihood or other consequences rather than a free choice. Do better. Yeah, do better, doctor. Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, folks, we're nearing the end of another episode. Thank you for watching. I hope we provided a little something different today that you didn't see on somebody else's show. We try to do that because I'm a real journalist. And I try to present all the news you need to know. And I'm going to be doing more interviews because that's what this show is about. Digging in to the real story and making sure we've got all the information and all the news that we need so that we can continue to resolve to resist. God bless you. Let's keep watching the House of Commons. Let's keep vigilant about an upcoming election, and let's be ready to strike out for freedom and freedom of speech. Thank you so much for watching today. God bless you all. I'll be back again tomorrow.